Paul was never the dramatic type when he left for his trip that Friday morning. He didn't say anything grand or sentimental. He just zipped his overnight bag, kissed my temple like he always did, and said, "Back by Tuesday, you'll have the house to yourself for a bit." And just like that, he was gone. I stood in the doorway for longer than I needed to watch his car roll down the gravel driveway until the pine trees swallowed it whole. The early fall sun filtered through the branches like something sacred golden and slow. But I didn't feel peace. I felt something else. Something I couldn't name. The air in the house shifted the moment. I locked the door behind me. It wasn't dramatic. Nothing creaked or howled. It was quieter than quiet. Thick like the house was listening, like the walls had been waiting for him to leave. I wandered into the kitchen, poured the rest of the lukewarm coffee from the pot, and stared out the window above the sink. The backyard looked the same. The lake shimmered in the distance. Ducks floated aimlessly. Everything was in its place except me. I had plans, simple ones: clean out the linen closet, make mushroom risotto, maybe take a bath with the fancy salts. Paul's sister gave me last Christmas a quiet weekend with no obligations. Just me in the silence and Jade. Of course, she was upstairs when Paul left, hadn't come down to say goodbye. She never did. Her world was contained in the corner bedroom with the blackout curtains, string lights, and mechanical keyboard that clicked like rainfall. She was 22 but carried herself like someone older, polished, calm, deliberate. She wasn't rude to me, not exactly, but we were never close either. She called me Elena. Never stepmom, never anything warmer. I'd been married to Paul for 3 years, and even though I'd lived under the same roof with her on and off, she still felt like a guest in my home, or maybe I felt like a guest in hers. We had a quiet truce that was enough still. There were moments, tiny ones, glimpses, like the time I passed by the hallway mirror and caught her watching me from the stairs, eyes lingering just a second too long. Not casual, not daughter-like. It made me pause, made my spine straighten. But when I turned, she was already gone. I never brought it up. Not even to myself that afternoon. Moved. Slowly, I swept the deck, reorganized the spice cabinet, heated up a frozen lasagna, and poured a glass of red wine I didn't particularly like around 7. I heard her footsteps overhead, then the soft creak of her dory. Didn't expect her to come down, but she did. She walked into the kitchen wearing an oversized gray hoodie and bike shorts, hair in a lazy bun. Face bare but still striking. She didn't say much. Just nodded once. Pulled out a chair and sat across from at the table, like it was something we always did. We didn't. I slid. A plate in front of her said something about the weather, about how the rain might hit by morning. She nodded again, but kept her eyes on the plate, chewing slowly, methodically. There was something unfamiliar in her posture, something quieter than usual. Her presence wasn't vague tonight. It was focused, settled, and it unsettled me. I felt her watching me, not occasionally, but steadily. I didn't look up. I couldn't. Because the truth was, I felt it. Her gaze on me wasn't passive. It was studied, measured, and the worst part, I didn't stop it. I let it happen. After dinner, she helped clear the plates without being asked that. Alone should have told me something was off. JD didn't usually participate in the rituals of domestic life. She wasn't disrespectful, just indifferent. Polite in a detached way, she moved through the house like a long-term guest who'd memorized the rules but never tried to change them. But tonight she collected the silverware, handed me the glasses without clinking. Then her movements were quiet, graceful, almost. Intentionally rinsed the plates in silence, the warm water a small comfort behind me. I could feel her moving, always just at the edge of my awareness. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The weight of her presence was louder than words. After a while, she disappeared back upstairs without saying goodnight. The floorboards creaked, once then settled. I poured myself another glass of wine and curled up on the couch, trying to lose myself in some half-hearted romantic comedy I'd seen at least 4 times, the kind with soft lighting and perfect endings, but I couldn't focus. The house was too quiet again. Not peaceful, but watchful. And I kept thinking about her eyes, the way she'd looked at me across the table. Not in passing, not out of boredom like she was reading. Me like she already knew what I would do before. I did it, and what unsettled me more was the way it made me feel, not frightened, not violated, intrigued, and that terrified me at some point. I drifted off on the couch. I don't know how long I slept, but when I woke up, the TV was still glowing softly, and the wine glass was still in my hand. I turned it slowly, the last sip, sloshing gently at the bottom. My mouth was dry, my head foggy, but it wasn't the wine that stirred me. It was a feeling, that creeping awareness, again, that I wasn't alone. I sat up slowly, eyes scanning the room. Empty the hallway beyond the stairs was. Dark, no sound, no movement. I told myself to let it go, to stop inventing ghosts. But I couldn't shake it, that odd sensation like the air was pressing in around. Me waiting, I stood stretched and made my way upstairs. The carpet softened my steps, muffled them into something dreamlike. When I passed her door, it was closed. No light beneath it. No sound of key snapping or music leaking through the walls. Just stillness. In my room, I changed into an old cotton tee and slid beneath the covers. Paul's side of the bed was untouched. I hadn't moved his pillow. I never did when he traveled. Something about it made me feel like he wasn't so far away. But as I lay there staring at the ceiling, I didn't think about Paul. I thought about her, the way she walked into the kitchen like she belonged there. The way her eyes didn't blink when they locked onto mine. The way I never looked away. Until it was too late. I shut my eyes hoping sleep would drown it out, but sleep didn't come, only silence, heavy awake. Then sometime, after 2, I heard it, a faint creak, the softest shift in the hallway. The sound of a floorboard. I knew by heart. The one just outside my door. I stopped breathing. At first, I thought I was imagining it. That soft creak outside the bedroom. It could have been the house settling, a shift in the wind, an echo of a memory from the last time Paul walked through that hallway. But then I heard it again. Slower this time, steadier footsteps, bare feet against the hardwood, careful. Measured, the sound of someone who wasn't trying to sneak, but wasn't trying to be announced either. I stayed still, my body frozen beneath the sheets. My breath, shallow, my eyes wide open but staring at the ceiling, refusing to look toward the door. My heart thudded in my chest, each beat louder than the last, and then the door opened. Not all the way, just enough for it to breathe. Just enough for whoever was there to slip inside. No voice. No light. No explanation. Just presence. I felt her before I saw her. The air shifted, the scent of warm linen, faint shampoo, and something else. Something I wore myself, my perfume. The one I only sprayed on nights I wanted to feel noticed. The mattress dipped beside, me slowly, not cautious like someone afraid to be caught, but deliberate, like someone returning to a place they'd already been. I could have spoken, I could have said her name, stopped her, but I didn't. Because my mind was already breaking. Rules my body wasn't strong enough to enforce. She was behind me now, under the blanket. Her breath warm against the back of my neck. Not a word passed between us. Just silence, slow and tense, charged with something unspoken but undeniable. Then I felt it. Her hand, soft, careful, brushing the skin of my upper arm, in a way that was too gentle to ignore. Too familiar to pretend it didn't belong. The way Paul used to touch me when I wanted to be close without words. When everything we needed to say was written in the space between bodies. Paul, I whispered. Barely audible, not because I believed it, but because I needed to hear myself say it, needed to anchor the moment to something real. But she didn't answer. She just exhaled, warm and steady, and pressed her lips against the curve of my jaw. Not rushed, not awkward, just confident, like she'd done it before, in some version of this world where we didn't have names. Just need me. Eyes flew open. The moonlight filtered through the slats of the blinds, slicing the room into silver and shadow. Just enough for me to see the outline of her face. It was her jade, Her eyes were already open, already looking at me, calm, certain. Not pleading. Not embarrassed. Just watching. And the worst part, I didn't pull away. I didn't scream. I didn't speak. I didn't run. I just watched. Her watched her watch. Me like I was. The unintruding, like the decision was never hers, but mine. She leaned in again. This time slower. Closer, and kissed me. Once more. This time not on my jaw, on my mouth. I didn't kiss her back, but I didn't stop. Her either. Her lips were soft, unhurried, deliberate. I felt the way her hand moved across my waist, drawing me closer, with the kind of tenderness that felt like danger. Not because of what she was doing, but because of how much I needed to feel it. When she pulled back just barely, she whispered, "You didn't stop me." I turned my face away, shame boiling just beneath my skin. My voice barely rose above breath. "Go back to your room." She didn't move. Instead, she pressed her forehead against the side of my head and said quietly, "You didn't stop me last time either." And she was right. There had been no kiss the night before. No touch, only breath, only presence. But in that moment, when her body had slipped beneath the covers and her fingers brushed mine, I hadn't moved then. Neither, because deep down, some part of me had let it happen, and worse. Some part of me had waited for it again. Jade didn't say another word. She slid off the bed, walked to the door, and looked back once. Not for confirmation. Not for guilt. Just a slow, unreadable glance that said everything I was trying to admit. Then she was gone. The door clicked softly behind her. The room was dark again, but there was no going back. To sleep the next morning, the house was filled with light, but nothing felt. Bridie moved like a sleepwalker through my own kitchen, every step rehearsed, mechanical, coffee mug, sink counter. But I couldn't stop hearing her breath. I couldn't stop feeling the shape of her lips on mine. Soft, sure, intentional. Like she hadn't just stolen something, but taken what she already believed was hers. When I opened the refrigerator, I froze. The silk robe, mine folded neatly on the bottom shelf, it was the same one I'd worn during a weekend getaway with Paul in Oregon. The own I'd packed away months ago without thinking. And now it sat among leftovers and orange juice, like it belonged there, like it was waiting for me to remember I didn't touch it. I shut the door slowly and leaned against it, breath catching in my chest. She was playing a different game now, not just physical, psychological symbolics. She wasn't knocking anymore. She was rearranging the furniture of my mind. I didn't see her at breakfast or lunch. The silence should have calmed me, but instead it grew teeth. Every creak in the hallway made me tense. Every quiet second stretched out like it was meant to hold a message. When Paul texted that afternoon, "Almost home, I miss you," I couldn't bring myself to type a response. My fingers hovered over the screen, frozen. I was afraid that even a simple "me too" would feel like a Jade. Reappeared around 5. She walked into the kitchen like nothing had happened, wearing a hoodie 3 sizes too big, socks pulled up to her calves, sipping from a glass of milk. She looked at me, smiled faintly, and asked, "Want me to help with dinner?" I blinked. What she shrugged. "I figured it's just a stow night, right?" I nodded slowly, unsure of what was happening. "You've never asked to help before." She grinned. "Maybe I'm evolving." She said it so lightly, so effortlessly. Almost laughed, almost. But when she stepped behind me to reach for a bowl, her hand brushed my lower back gently, briefly, but not by accident. I flinched. She didn't react. Dinner was quiet. We ate like 2 people, pretending to be family, forks clicking. Against plates, the occasional practiced smile. She didn't look at me the way she had the night before. No heat. No daringly calm, steady, a quiet sort of possession. When I stood to wash the dishes, she stayed seated at the table. I could feel her watching me again. But this time, it wasn't curiosity. It was certainty. The kind of stare someone gives a door they know will open eventually. "You okay?" she asked. After a while, Her tone was so casual, so soft, it almost made me cry. Not from comfort, from confusion. "I'm fine," I replied, not turning around. "You look tired." "I didn't sleep much." She stood then slowly, walked over until I could see her reflection in the window in front of me. Close, quiet, stilly. "Turned off the water, Jade," I said. My voice barely above a whisper. "We need to talk." She nodded slowly. "I know, but before I could speak again, she leaned in just slightly and said something that turned my stomach to stone. "You didn't say no. You still haven't heard." Words weren't angry, they weren't accusing, they were simply true. I wanted to deny it, to scream, to list every boundary she'd crossed. But all I could do was stand there, breath shallow, shame arising like smoke from somewhere deep inside me. She didn't touch me this time. She didn't need to. Her presence alone was enough. It was everywhere now, soaked into the wallpaper, embedded in the silence. Between words stitched into the shape of the robe, I refused to move from Theffridge. And I realized in that moment, I hadn't just let her in once. I'd left the door open. Paul got home the next morning. He brought coffee and gas station flowers, kissed my cheek with the sleepy affection of a man who still believed everything was as it should be. I smiled back. I lied with my mouth, and Jade. She hugged him like a daughter who had missed her father. Sweet, casual, untouchable dinner that night was almost theatrical in how normal it tried to be. Paul told Astery about his hotel mix-up in Boise, and I laughed at all the right parts. Jade passed him the salad bowl like a perfect daughter, asking how his meeting had gone. But every time she glanced at me, and she did, it was deliberate, quietly loaded. A private joke I didn't want Toby in on after dinner. I told them I was tired. I slipped away to the study, shut the door, locked it, and sat on the edge of the couch for what felt like hours. I should have left the house. I should have called someone. I should have told Paul everything. But I didn't, because I wasn't sure what was worse, what had happened, or the part of me that had let it happen. When the knock came, it was soft, almost polite. I froze Paul. I called no answer, then through the door. Jade's voice low and unshaken. "Can we talk?" I stood but didn't unlock it. "I don't think that's a good idea." I said. A pause. "Then you don't think, or you don't want to admit what this is?" I swallowed, palms sweating. "This was a mistake. You know that." Another pause, then came the voice. I feared more than anything. Not angry, not pleading, just terrifyingly sure. No, Elena. A mistake is something you regret while it's happening, but you didn't flinch. You let me in. You kissed me back, my hand gripped the doorknob, shaking. "Go to your room," I whispered. She didn't. Instead, I heard her lean in, closer, voice pressed to the door. "I know how you feel when he touches you. I know you pretend. I've watched it. I've heard it, and I've felt the difference." That's when I broke, yanked open the door, ready to scream, to curse, to make her leave. But she was already there. Close, calm, her face inches from mine. "Don't," I hissed. She tilted her head, smile, almost sweet. "Don't what?" she asked softly. "Say what you want." And then just like that, she stepped in, past the door, past the space, past every line I'd drawn and redrawn in my head for days. Her fingers reached for the side of my face. I pulled back. She followed. Her hand slid to my hip. Didn't slap it away, and she knew. If you're still watching, and your chest feels as tight as mine did in that moment, this is where I ask for your support. Super chat or super sticker keeps these stories alive, raw, unfiltered, and just real enough to make you wonder if they ever happened. Maybe they did. Maybe they didn't, but they'll stay with you. That I promise. She leaned in, her lips brushed mine, soft, mistakable, and I kissed her back, because I couldn't lie anymore. Not to her, not to myself. I didn't want her to stop. When her mouth moved down to my neck, I gasped. It wasn't confusion anymore. It wasn't about pretending she was someone else. It was Jade, and I was letting her. touch me. The shame didn't come until later. The consequences would arrive eventually. But in that moment, heat breath, closeness. I was only a woman being seen and wanted, and undone we collapsed onto the couch hands. Everywhere. Breaths, uneven clothes. Forgotten. And not once did I ask her to stop. Because by then, I knew I wouldn't Paul left again. On Monday he packed his usual carry-on, kissed me on the forehead, like always, and reminded me that Jade's semester break was almost over. "She's a good kid," he said as he grabbed his keys. "Thanks for making her feel at home." I smiled, I waved. I closed the door and I stood there for a long time, hand still on the knob, listening to the quiet hum of the house, no footsteps. No suitcase wheels, just the dull echo of the life we'd built and the things we never said out loud. Jade was in the living room, curled on the couch, barefoot, flipping through a book. She probably wasn't reading. She didn't look up when I passed, didn't speak, didn't ask for anything. But when I reached the stairs, her voice found me like a whisper. "I hadn't asked. For you're not going to pretend that didn't happen, are you?" I stopped mid-step. I didn't turn around. My voice was steady when I replied, "I'm not pretending anything, but it doesn't change what's real." She closed the book slowly, and "What's real?" I turned, then finally looking the really looking, her expression wasn't smug. It wasn't taunting. It was calm, measured, still holding that unnerving blend of certainty and softness that made everything feel both intimate and dangerous. "What's real," I said, "is that I'm married to a good man, and I betrayed him." She stood, walked toward me slowly. "You also remembered who you are. That's not betrayal. That's survival." I laughed bitterly. "Is that how you justify it?" She didn't flinch. "It's how I live with it. We didn't touch that day. We didn't kiss again. We just stood there. Two women bound by something. Neither of us had language for staring into the space between desire and destruction. That night, I slept in Paul's t-shirt. I stripped the sheets. I made tea and watched the sun rise from the back porch, like I used to before the years got heavy, and for the first time in months, I cried. Not because I was ashamed, not even because I was caught, but because I realized I had become someone I didn't recognize. Not worse, not better, just different, a version of myself who had looked into the eyes of a younger woman and seen hunger. And answered it. Some people call it weakness. Others call it awakening. I don't have a name for it, only a memory amament. A kiss that didn't feel wrong until after it ended, and the silence that followed, which said, "More than either of us ever would if you've made it here. Thank you for staying with this story." Temptation isn't always loud. It can be quiet, patient, and deeply human. But what matters isn't just what we feel, it's what we choose. And if this story stirred something in you, it's okay to sit with that discomfort. It means you're still capable of questioning, of feeling, of growing. If this resonated with you, even just one line, consider hitting that like button. It tells the algorithm this story mattered. Subscribe if you want more. Narratives that explore the gray, the vulnerable, the parts we usually hide. And if you'd like to support us directly, drop a super chat or a super sticker. It helps us keep telling stories that don't always have clean endings, but always ask honest questions, because being seen is powerful. But being honest with yourself, that's where freedom begins.